The wind howled low across the desert plain, carrying with it the dry whisper of dust and cedar smoke. The sun had already slipped behind the red cliffs, leaving streaks of dying gold across the sky. To the lone cowboy riding down from the mesa, it felt like the world was holding its breath. His name was Luke Hart, a man used to silence. He'd been trailing cattle for weeks, his mind as empty as the endless horizon, until the night he saw the fire. It flickered like a signal, a small, defiant flame against the vastness of the wild. Smoke curled upward from the canyon floor, faint but steady. He reined in his horse, squinting. No settlers would camp there, the land was Apache territory. He should have turned away, but something about that light tugged at him. It wasn't the cautious glow of warriors. It was thin, weak, almost desperate. Curiosity and a sense of unease pushed him forward. He dismounted near the edge of the canyon, his boots crunching softly over gravel. Below, the glow revealed a small camp. One figure moved near the fire, slender, wrapped in a tattered blanket, tending to something on the ground. Luke's eyes adjusted, catching the outline of a young Apache woman, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She was not part of a war party, that much he could tell. The way her movements trembled, how she leaned forward to stir the embers, spoke of exhaustion, not defiance. Nearby, a horse lay still, its flank torn open, probably from a fall or a mountain cat. Luke hesitated. He'd seen what happened when cowboys wandered into tribal lands uninvited. Yet, watching her struggle to drag her meager belongings closer to the fire, something in him shifted. She couldn't have been more than 20. Alone, injured, freezing as the desert night came crawling down. He led his horse slowly down the slope, keeping his hands open and visible. The rocks crackled under his boots, alerting her before he spoke. She whirled around, a knife flashing in her hand. "Easy," he said, voice low and calm. "I ain't here to harm you." Her eyes were fierce, dark, glinting like obsidian. She didn't speak, though her breath came sharp and fast. Her blade trembled slightly in her grip, but she didn't lower it. Luke took one step closer, then stopped when he saw blood on her arm. It soaked the sleeve of her deerskin shirt, dark and fresh. "Looks like you've been hurt," he said softly. "You need help." Her answer was a harsh word in Apache he didn't understand, but her tone was enough. "Stay back." Luke nodded slowly, easing himself down to a crouch by the edge of the firelight. "All right," he murmured, "then I'll just sit here a minute. Got water, if you want some." He waited. The night deepened around them, the distant cry of coyotes, the sighing wind through pinyon branches. Eventually, her breathing steadied. Her knife wavered, then dropped to her lap. She looked from him to his canteen, her face unreadable. He slid it toward her. "No tricks." She hesitated, then snatched it, drinking greedily. The sound of her swallowing echoed in the stillness. When she finally handed it back, her eyes softened a fraction. "My name's Luke," he said after a while. "Luke Hart. You got a name." She seemed to weigh whether he was worth an answer. Then, in a quiet, hesitant voice, she said, "Taya." "Taya," he repeated. "That's a good name." She didn't reply, but the faintest flicker of curiosity touched her gaze, like a spark that almost died but found something to cling to. Over the next few hours, they shared the fire's warmth in near silence. He tore a strip from his saddlebag cloth and offered to bind her arm. She resisted at first, glaring, but when he pointed to the blood seeping through again, she let him. His touch was careful, slow, deliberate. The wound wasn't deep, but it had gone untended too long. The desert had turned green when Luke rode back through the canyon 9 months later. Spring rain had softened the hard edges of the land, and the creeks that once trickled weakly now flowed strong between the cottonwoods. The air smelled of sage and fresh grass. Yet the land felt different, heavier somehow, as if something was waiting for him. Luke hadn't planned on returning. After the night he found Taya, he'd taken her to the edge of a trading post near the San Pedro River, left her with a kind Mexican woman who promised to give her shelter. He'd told himself it was for the best. She was young, wounded, and he didn't belong in her world. A man like him, rough, scarred, worn down by too many winters, wasn't fit for her kind of gentleness. But every night since, he'd seen her face in the firelight. Her dark eyes, strong but tired. The way she'd whispered thank you when she thought he was asleep. And now, somehow, he was back. The trading post sat quiet as he approached, only a few chickens clucking near the corrals. The adobe walls were freshly whitewashed, and smoke rose from the chimney. He dismounted slowly, dust falling from his coat as he looped his reins over the hitching post. A child's laughter floated from behind the house, light, wild, echoing like birdsong. Luke froze. He stepped around the corner, and the sight that met him stopped his heart. Taya stood in the small garden behind the post, her long hair braided and shining in the sunlight. In her arms, she held a baby, no, two. One rested against her shoulder, the other sat at her feet, reaching for a butterfly. And around her, 3 children played, all with dark eyes, tanned skin, and laughter that filled the air. For a moment, Luke couldn't breathe. She turned when she heard the crunch of his boots. The surprise on her face was like sunrise, slow, bright, and full of disbelief. "Luke," she whispered. He took off his hat, holding it over his chest. "Didn't reckon you'd remember me." Her lips curved softly. "How could I forget the man who gave me back my life?" He swallowed, eyes darting to the children. "Looks like you been busy." Taya laughed then, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. "They are not all mine," she said quickly, seeing the confusion on his face. "These two," she looked down at the twins, her voice softening. "Yes, they are mine, but the others, they belong to the women who had nothing. The ones who lost husbands to war. I take care of them here. We build something new." Luke's chest tightened. "You built a home out here?" She nodded, her gaze proud. "With help from the trader's wife. She said I had a gift for mending things, not just clothes, but hearts." He smiled faintly. "Reckon she's right." Taya stepped closer, holding the smallest child in her arms. The baby reached for his beard, cooing. Luke stared down at the tiny hand, dark skin, tiny fingers curling around one of his own. A strange warmth flooded through him, heavy and deep. "She's strong," Taya said softly. "Like you." He blinked. "Like me." Her eyes lifted to his, unflinching. "She was born too soon. The trader's wife said she might not live. But she fought, like a wild thing. I told her stories about you, about the man who saved me in the storm. I said she had your courage." Luke's throat tightened, and for once, he didn't know what to say. He stared out across the horizon, trying to steady himself, but the sound of the children's laughter kept pulling him back, grounding him in a world he didn't think he deserved.